Hi everyone, and welcome to this video where we look at a computer in my classic computer collection. Now, most of the computers in my collection are classics, but there's some that are there for different reasons. There are some that are there for nostalgic reasons, and this is one of them. This is the EACA Colour Genie. Now, the EACA Colour Genie was brought out in 1982, and it was one of many home computers that were brought out at that time. It didn't last very long in the market, only lasted for a little over a year, and it didn't have much impact either. But it's one that has a certain, I suppose, emotional attachment for me. Now, EACA brought out the Dick Smith System 80, which is my very first computer. Now, this was a TRS-80 Model 1 clone. It was sold in Australasia as a Dick Smith System 80, but in Europe as the Video Genie, and in North America as the PMC 80. And EACA followed this machine up with a colour unit. Now, so did Tandy, the people that owned the TRS-80 Model 1. They also followed up with a colour computer for the home market, but they used a different processor, and their machine was really nothing like the TRS-80 Model 1. Whereas EACA took a different path. They had this clone of the TRS-80 Model 1, and when they brought out its successor for the home market, the colour computer, they added a few custom chips for the graphics and sound. They took the Level 2 BASIC that was already in the machine and just extended it, so they added a few extra commands for the graphics and the sound, and it was essentially an extended version of that original Level 2 BASIC that you found in the TRS-80 Model 1, even right down to the line editor. So the whole feel of it, and not the look, was that of the TRS-80 Model 1. So you can think of it almost as the sort of machine that Tandy might have brought out if they'd stuck with the Z80 processor and simply extended the TRS-80 Model 1 to give us some of those features that the home market desired. So anyway, let's have a look at it. Colour Genie was released in Europe, and it was released in Australia and New Zealand, but to my knowledge it was never released in North America. Now, the ad you can see here is from a British dealer in 1982, and you notice the headline there, "Why Wait Months?" Now, what that is alluding to is the long production delay for the Sinclair Spectrum. And this is one of the models that it was head-to-head with. That plus the VIC-20, and to a lesser extent the Dragon 32. Technically, as far as the specs are concerned, there were pros and cons when compared with those machines I just mentioned. But that didn't really matter. The fact was that Sinclair and Commodore had way more money, way more marketing clout, and way more distribution outlets than EACA. So the Colour Genie really didn't stand a chance and barely made an impression, especially in the British market. Here in New Zealand, it was also competing with the same machines, with the exception of the Dragon. Here you can see an advertisement from 1983, about mid-1983. By that time, the Commodore 64 was also on the scene, but at a much higher price, at 1,295 New Zealand dollars. This was being sold for 795. Now, unlike EACA's earlier machine, the Dick Smith System 80, Dick Smith wasn't involved with promotion this time. In fact, he was promoting rival cheap home computers. Consequently, the poor old Colour Genie didn't really get legs here either, although a couple of very active user groups were set up in Wellington and Christchurch. These groups supported the machine for a time, even after EACA itself had collapsed. Here is my machine then. Now, I wouldn't call my specimen in excellent showpiece condition, but it's tidy enough. I find it somewhat functional but attractive. Gone are the fake wood veneer sides of the early EACA machine, along with the built-in cassette recorder. The same full-stroke keyboard is there though, along with off-white and black livery. It also has a built-in power supply and also a built-in RF modulator, so clutter's really kept to a minimum. Clutter was a real feature of early microcomputers, those of the early 1980s, where you often had an external power supply and an external RF modulator, various bits and pieces and cords going everywhere. To have something neatly contained all in the one case, I think is a good thing. Here's a closer look at the unit. A nice full-stroke keyboard with the keys exactly where they should be. Moving around the left side, we see a parallel port, a couple of DIN plugs, one for a light pen and the other for a serial port. Just moving around the back, we've got quite a few ventilation slots on the case, as you can see. So from left to right, we have a cassette port. We have a bus expansion slot. This was used mainly for disk drives and a disk drive interface. You needed both. There's an RF modulator output with a built-in cord, ready to be plugged into the family TV. A couple of RCA sockets for audio and the other for composite video. There's a rocker on-off switch, and finally the power cord. Here's the colourful label. You can see the one scratch my unit has on two, which is a bit of a pity, but there you go. Yes, I like the case design, which is really quite retro in style. Reminds me of the Sorcerer in some ways. Keys have full stroke travel and are pretty good to type on. You see the graphic symbols on the keys there underneath, a la Petsky style. And unlike the first EACA model, lowercase and the lowercase driver were built into the unit. With the hood off, we can see the PSU on the left and a single board with a couple of daughter boards mounted on it. The daughter boards I want to talk about, the first one you can see here is a RAM expansion, and this raises the RAM from 16K, which was built into the unit, to 32. The second board holds four 4K ROM chips. Now interestingly, there were two versions of the Colour Genie ROM released, and this upgrade may have even been from a third party rather than EACA. Unfortunately, the upgraded ROMs added an extra row to the screen, so instead of having 24 rows, it had 25. And a lot of software was developed to make use of this 25th row, which means it wasn't compatible with computers with the older ROMs. Incompatibility within a model is never a very good thing. Some of you might know of the Mysterious Adventure series for the TRS-80 Model 1. Bought out by Mollymerks. They also bought out a version for the Colour Genie. Here's a glossy ad from Low Electronics, one of the distributors of the Colour Genie in the UK, and also a magazine called Chewing Gum, which came out specifically to support the Colour Genie. Not sure how many issues of Chewing Gum were released. Now, another thing I got with my Colour Genie was all of the newsletters released by the Auckland District Colour Genie user group. And reading them is quite fascinating in that they really are a snapshot of how active and how important these user groups could be for machines that were no longer supported because their manufacturers had gone bankrupt or had simply stopped making and supporting them. You know, great historical documents. Okay, so let's put our Colour Genie to work, and to do that we'll load in a program off cassette, and this is a typical cassette for the Colour Genie. This one's called SORG. So I'll just turn our machine on. There you can see mem size very much like the TRS-80 Model 1. The first line at the top tells me which ROM version I've got. So we're now, see we're in Colour Basics, so I'll type in System and then push S for SMORG. Again, just like the TRS-80 Model 1. So it's waiting now for inputs, so I'm going to have to load the cassette up. So we'll just take our cassette, drop it in there, just check everything's wired up, and push play. So the computer's waiting for some input. So around go the capstans, and our program should be starting very soon, as soon as we get off the header tape. Just run around the back and I'll show you how it's plugged into the unit. So we've got our very little handy volume gauge here, so there we go. We've now got the program loading in. Now, like I've done in other videos, I'll just skip through the loading sequence and edit it out. It usually takes 3 or 4 minutes. So here we are at the splash screen. You can see the colours there. You'll notice that it's in German, and in fact a lot of the games that I have got are in German.
I want to show you this one because it's a weird and strange game. You can see some creatures there going backwards and forwards, and it's almost a little bit like Snake in that you seem to be this type of personified anteater, and the idea is to poke your nose or this tube down these holes. I suppose you're trying to suck these things up. They're creatures that you got to suck up, but you've got to be careful because that one down the lower right there that's moving very quickly, if you try and suck that one up, you die, so that's to be avoided. So it's a matter of snaking around the maze, trying to get all of the creatures you can, all of the blue creatures, without encountering that purple one that's very, very active. And it tends to change position at random, so you might think you're nowhere near it and suddenly it will appear there. There's a little blue one right next to it, which I just managed to get. So there we are. That's Sorg. I'll just very quickly show you one or two other games. This is a jetpack game. Really just want to show you these to give you some idea of the variety of games that you got with the Genie. Then we have a chopper game. It's pretty typical of a chopper game, so you get in other platforms. You've got to navigate mazes and try to pick up your passengers without crashing into anything. Not an easy thing to do. Along with games, quite a few utilities also came out for the Colour Genie. This is the colour monitor, so this is a program which allows you to change the contents of memory and do a number of things in machine code. You did get if you looked for them, you could find the same sort of utilities that you would find in the TRS-80 Model 1. Not quite as many, but they were there, along with more serious bits of software like word processors, for example. But mostly games. Here's some more. This is a type of Space Invaders game. Gives you an indication there of the speed of the graphics and what some of these games look like. This one's called Death Trap, which is very similar to Death Maze that some of you might know from the TRS-80 Model 1. You just try to find your way through the many twisting passages there, and sometimes you come across objects that you can use. Here's another interesting game. It's a variation of Pac-Man, but it has these movable sides in the maze that if you hit them, they'll change the pattern, which I thought was a fairly interesting variation on the game. Now again, this was written by somebody from Germany. As I said, most of the software I've got was written in Germany. Then we've got our more traditional Pac-Man with our ghosts and our small Pac-Man gobbling up various power pools. Every good home computer should have a version of Pac-Man. Here's a game called Scramble, where you have to fly over enemy territory, bombing and strafing and generally wreaking havoc on the populace. Very similar to Penetrator on the TRS-80 Model 1. Now I'm just showing you this game here because it illustrates something that's a trick that can be used on the Colour Genie, and certainly was used in units like Spectrum, where you could load in some information before the game actually starts, load it into memory as the tape was being loaded, just to give the user a bit of eye candy. This is a Frogger clone, so again you'll all recognise this. You've got your cars going at a great rate of knots, logs, crocodiles, and you've got to get your helpless amphibian across the road. So as you can see, I'm nearly there, but I've fallen in the river, so our frog's not going to get to the other side today. Then we've got a few chess games. This one's called Super Chess. Fairly easy to use, but not that easy to beat. And another game called Jet Set Billy, where our player investigates an underground cave and has to navigate a number of hazards by jumping and moving and doing all the sort of things that you should do in a game such as this, without getting killed, just like I did.
Well, as I mentioned in other videos, I always try and get user manuals where I can, so I've got a couple for the Colour Genie. This is the user guide, so this just shows how to set up the machine, a little bit of basic information about it, how you might load programs from cassette, how to get around the keyboard, what some of the various special keys do, how the screen works, what the screen dimensions are, and just some very simple exercises to get people familiar with using the machine. Quite a good, introductory manual. Certainly not the worst I've seen by any stretch of the imagination. Editing, screen editing is exactly the same as the TRS-80 Model 1. The section on graphics, how the sound might work. So that's the beginner's manual. Now, no home computer of the early 1980s would be complete without a basic manual, and the Colour Genie certainly has one. It is more of a tutorial, so the idea is that you start at the beginning and work through to the end. It covers all the concepts of basic. It has a lot of examples that you can use to illustrate the various aspects. But it's not a reference manual, and this is made pretty obvious because it doesn't have an index. So you can't quickly look things up. You've got to thumb through until you find the bit you might be looking for if you want to refer to anything. So that limits its use somewhat. I do have a third book called Mastering Colour Genie. This is a bit more comprehensive. It covers a lot of aspects of the machine and also covers the basic, but goes into a lot more detail. So good examples there. Lots of different themes are explored. Pretty useful book if you had a Colour Genie back in the day and you really wanted to try and get the most out of it. So that's the EACA Colour Genie. Now my unit here is a cassette-based one, but you could buy an expansion box for it, which gave you a disk interface and attach a couple of disk drives to it. And it did come with its own operating system called ColorDOS, but I don't think it's very common. I certainly don't have it. Well, I hope you enjoyed that look at the EACA Colour Genie. As I said at the beginning, it's not really a classic machine, but every collection should have a few oddball machines in them. I think it makes the collection interesting because they tend to be machines that are relatively rare. And although they didn't have much market impact, some of these machines have some quite interesting features. And this EACA Colour Genie, as I said at the beginning, it's comes from the same stable as the Dixon System 80, was a successor to that machine, and for that reason I'm pleased to have one in my collection. So until next time, keep well, and we'll see you in the next video.